Good morning. Hope everybody's well. This is day 3 of my Foragemobile travels, and I just wanted to give you all a moment of sharing what's been going on, and also hopefully give you some tips for how to live as a hobo. So, I found an awesome place to sleep last night. I basically am just trying to drive until it's pretty dark. So start with yesterday really. Yesterday I traveled and I found a spring, so I filled up my spring water. Hello friends, and filled up on spring water. And whenever I'm dealing with a new spring, what I'll do first is I'll fill up this bottle here, and then I'll start drinking from it. Just knowing that that's the spring water. So when I'm at the place, I'll chug maybe 16 ounces of the water. Hello, welcome. And therefore, if I was going to get sick, because you can always possibly get sick from contaminated spring water, then I would have symptoms, and they're easy to treat symptoms. So dysentery is not that big of a deal compared to all the stuff that people get from drinking commercially available products all day and night. So you would then treat with, for example, I have like OSHA, and I also have this other potent tincture, which is just a mix of all kinds of herbs in here, including resins, pine sap, medicinal mushrooms, several antibacterial substances, because that's kind of my Lyme disease go-to, so if I get bit by a tick. And I also have OSHA, so OSHA root would also be helpful in that case. And then in the back area I have Triphala, and of course I always keep raw honey with me. So those would be a very good formula combination, including maybe turmeric, 1 to 2 teaspoons. So all that together would help me fight any issues that I was going to get with dysentery, which generally is usually microbial in nature, so not a big deal. Not parasites. You're not going to get parasites from drinking spring water necessarily. So of course then you could always just boil the water for one rolling boil, and that would take care of any issues as well. And again, this sounds scary to some people, the idea of drinking spring water, but actually it's much safer than for example, the BPA and the phthalates that are coming from water bottles. So your chances of that risk, I've been drinking spring water for probably 5 or 6 years, collecting spring water, and I got an issue one time. So that's not very frequently. So findaspring.com is a great website that I travel along with, and I always try to pick up on spring water. So I have in the back, I have a 5-gallon bucket. For those of you who are watching, feel free to ask any questions, because this is really a process in the making, which means that I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time and starting to acquire the materials to make this shift. So it's plastic, it's not glass, bumpy, driving around in a van. And then also, if you crack a glass one, they just completely shatter and the water pours out because of the water pressure. So it's a big mess. So I have plastic, but it doesn't last more than a couple days, maybe a week. It's sitting in there, each batch of water. And then of course from there, dealing with the fact that basically it doesn't sit there for very long. So then I have a water pump. This is really fun. And then under there I also have another 3 gallons of water, so that gets me, those are glass, those are really great, so that gets me about a week and a half of water, and then I'll travel along that website, Find a Spring. I also converted that onto my phone, so that's something you all can do. If you save the pins on Google Maps, then you can actually view them on your phone, so that's really important. So water is life, as they say. And then, so here's the deal, basically, for now, I got the seat put in, thanks to Tim from his metalworking skills. So now we finally got a seat That was a crazy experience. Basically, I left New Jersey, drove to Deer Park, New York, got a seat, drove out of Deer Park, New York, went to Ananda Ashram, taught there, started kind of organizing stuff around to put the seat in for a couple days. It was kind of like clustered there. I had to lay it on its side. And then I drove to New Jersey. My friend Tim in northern New Jersey helped me put the seat in. That was amazing. He's a custom welder. I wrote an article about that on Return to Nature Facebook page, so you can check that out there. And then that gives me, I've been waiting for this moment. It's a divider between the trunk space, so then I could stack up without, like if I hit the brakes, everything would dip forward. So now everything is sequestered by the seat. I'm going to add in another layer here. So that's really exciting. Then, of course, clothes drying. There's my underwear. They're wonderful. And then here's my solar. Here's the battery. Here's food storage, more food storage, stove, Dr. Bronner's, oils, wonderful things. Easily grabbables there. And then here I have just full of storage. I actually found organic peanut butter, for example. Don't have the jar around. Without palm oil. And just, I like peanuts and salt, organic peanuts and salt. No sugar, because I would always rather add maple syrup or eat honey when I eat nut butter, or combine with fruit. So I eat nut butter and apples, for example. So I found them for super cheap yesterday, so I bought like 6 cases or 6 packages. So you can kind of live pretty cheap. And I actually wild harvested these apples while I was at Ananda Ashram, so I got some wild apples, some cultivated apples, every once in a while a bag of chips. This was really cheap. So this is plastic, you know, and that's the question of how much waste do we produce. I am producing very little waste. So then here's herbal supplies for workshops, medicine making. There's Return to Nature goodies. This is what you support, friends. So Lauren's back at the apothecary in New Jersey, holding it down there. Got a couple more friends helping to hook it up. So if you think of us for the holidays, definitely check out the herbal goodies at Return to Nature. And here's my nutcracker. I brought it on the road. Really good thing. Then I have to take this back. This is supposed to be the ductwork. This is crazy because it's the wrong size, so I have to ship it back and get another one. Hey JD, where are the pawpaws ripe and ready by you? Tell it definitely, it's all about organization. And I of course have a bow and arrows in my quiver, camera stand, a whooping stick. This is really just a wonderful tool for anything that I need, including whooping. Hopefully not. Not a big fan of that. And then some reflective insulation, because my friend in California is going to help me install what I call the Fernbird shelving. Fernbird's an awesome soul down in Florida, and she makes herbal goodies as well. Here comes Trains. And she has the same van as me, which has really inspired me. And she's got these shelving there, so I'm going to put shelves on both sides, and then also a shelf panel here. I was thinking of using crates. If you cut them in the right way, they make great shelving. So that'll be shelving space. Here's the solar panel batteries up here. This runs all the way through to the ceiling. Some unfortunate news. Another thing I have to do while touring is that I kind of screwed up the first panel input. These are really crappy, unfortunately, the way this is designed. So I'm trying to get that duct I mentioned over this, which is going to help sort of, but those things, those ways that the solar panels have an input there are pretty junky. It's like some really junky glue. Even this one is starting to seem to come undone, but that one actually, so unfortunately, I hit like a power wire, so totally pulled it off. Luckily there's a warranty on those, so I have to pull that off probably and replace that. But I haven't dropped in battery at all, and haven't used as much as I was at Ananda Ashram. So that's basically the solar setup. then I've got some bulk foods here. There is oatmeal mix. So I have like dried fruits, a lot of stuff I've wildcrafted, etc. Plus, salt. Sometimes I'll put like maca powder in there, whatever it is, just stir it around. And that's instant oats basically. So Sage is going to come along for some of the journey, if not all of the journey, depending on how things go. And that'll really fill up his little belly. Easy to make. You don't even require heat, so you could just soak the quick oats and then eat them as is, especially if you soak them overnight. It's really good. And then I have rice and beans. This is wild rice and mung beans. I bought bulk, so I have a bunch of jars around. So the idea is to make like basically caches all around. So buy in bulk and then fill up the bulk buckets. And all of the places that I stop along the way, these budding eco-villages will have bulk buying cooperative situations, so you just fill up a lot as you go, and those are some good staples. So if I was going to eat the beans and rice, I would soak them with the spring water and then cook them. Make sure to soak them overnight. That saves you a lot of firewood or camping gas. So basically the problem is the solar is all on 12 volt, so it's very hard to get basically a burner heat or heating for your body. So basically when you live like this, it's kind of live on propane, but of course I'm using it very sparsely compared to what many people may do. For example, what I mean by sparsely is if I want coffee, why deprive myself? Just have coffee, but it's cold brew. So I have bulk yerba mate and coffee. So I buy that through our Frontier Co-op buying club in New Jersey, which we get it delivered there. So this is Pachamama Cooperative, pretty good coffee company. Says all the sustainable stuff. And I'll just soak it in a jar with some water, and that is fine. And I'll add maple syrup. So there's all my sugar. So the idea is you don't have to live without, you just have to try to revamp it to be as chemical free and sustainable as possible. So I also bought yesterday, since I'm in maple syrup country, I bought a gallon of maple syrup. And they had glass and plastic, so I went for the plastic because I don't want it to bang around and crack. But that'll fill up this. So now after I use this, I have a small front area amount of maple syrup, and then I'll fill it up with a gallon and pretty much stick to a gallon. It'll find its place in the van. So, everything's still finding its place, of course. I just got the seat put in. You see those lights? Those lights are running on solar. So I just got the seat put in, and my friend Tim actually built this custom footing. It was amazing to watch. He's a welder, and he helped increase the size of the seat, the height of the seat. And I didn't realize that basically everybody's feet are going to be dangling unless you're really tall, or unless the bed, which I'm folding, is right below it. So now you got your foot position, but I don't necessarily want everybody to be stepping on the bed. Sagey, Angie, my close friends, it's cool. But if we have guests, then it's part of the vision for the van is to have a podcasting studio. So one of the things I want to do eventually is raise enough funds to get these seats to flip around, and then there would be 2 front seats facing inward, and then the bench, and then we can put Bernie Sanders there and grill him with a microphone in the front, or this camera, and we can have podcasts wherever I go. And that's part of the goal, is to bring in a new version of media. This is going to be partially a news van, and so I'll be able to come to you all in different places and start doing interviews about people who matter, and with people who matter, about topics that matter, because there's a real lack of that going on. So stay tuned for that. So we'll have this living room space. There's a lot of storage under the seat now, so I'm going to build some custom storage. And there's also the wheel wells. So my goal is to build in a way where the wood is going to box that to a point where it's semi-flush with the seat height, and then I can put some matting on top, and so somebody could also sleep right across that. It's approximately 6 feet wide, so both sides will have extra space. Plus, I want that to open up and be some sort of storage cubby for whatever it may be, toys, Sage's things, etc. These are my gifts for Sage. I got my Tigger from when I was little, and Hess truck. He loves, that's funny, right? Brought to you by Hess. He loves ladders, so I remember these were my parents' garage. So it lights up and makes noise. I will break the noise-making portion, but the lights are fun and cool. Toys that make a lot of noise are just too much for me. So I'm gonna hook Seiji up with that. I got a sack of potatoes from Cherry Valley Cooperative. They hooked it up, so that's really awesome. That'll last a long time because it's going to be pretty cold where I'm traveling. Last few nights it's been really cold. Last night was warmer, and we'll see how it goes. Frost is coming, the winter's coming. I imagine, I'm headed right now to Columbus, Ohio to teach on Saturday, and then next weekend we'll be in Indiana and Kentucky, around there, so that'll be really fun. Hope if you live in the area you'll come visit. Let's see, Pamela says, your event is very inspiring. I'm interested in growing microgreens from wild edible seeds. I've not heard of anyone doing this. I want to do it because microgreens are higher in, I would imagine, protein, etc., nutrients. So really awesome contribution to the discussion, and that's something that I eventually want to have. For example, you can make 3-gallon bottles into microgreens or sprouting areas, so I plan to do that. The idea of doing it wild is something I've thought about a lot, wild microgreen seeds. So I think about dandelions, hairy bittercress, chickweed. That would be a really good combination, so you can kind of just mow it. Right, mow a microgreen tray. There is this shelving up here which is plastic, really thick plastic. So right now I have some things up there. This is kind of how I settle in for the night. Thanks to Alex from Antonongo Earth Art School for helping me sewing this for me. So he sewed this curtain on a curtain rod. So that kind of hangs in there, but in there for now is my book collection, Botany in a Day, David Abram, The Spell of the Sensuous, Field Guide to Wildflowers, book on Hildegard of Bingen, who was a mystic herbalist in the Christian tradition. This is a really cool book about Darwin's Blind Spot by Frank Ryan. That's basically about symbiosis instead of survival of the fittest. This is a book a friend gave me, Entheogens and the Future of Religion. This is a really cool, influential book for me, The Yoga of Herbs by Vasant Lad and David Frawley. This is Mark Plotkin, who is a really great author of the Richard Evans Schulte School, who were basically the anthropologists and ethnobotanists who went down to the jungle, etc., to document shamanic use of entheogens instead of just hippies getting high. Audubon Field Guide to Mushrooms is an interesting one, which I've just been checking out his YouTube videos. Mike Crowley, he talks about his theories on soma and other things about shamanic or plant work within the Buddhist tradition, and there's also some shamanic tradition within the Bon religion and also before that. So Yulia says, you got so far with the van project, and what is the future of religion? Of course, you probably mean the book, but if I took that as your statement as it is, there goes a rant. So this is, let's see, essays by people like Albert Hoffman, who basically discovered LSD, R. Gordon Wasson, who was an self-taught anthropologist who went down to document Maria Sabina, who was a Mazatec shaman in Oaxaca, Mexico, and she was working with psychedelic mushrooms, which were then R. Gordon Wasson published in Life magazine, all about his experience there in the 30s, which brought all the hippies there and basically ruined her life, and the whole tradition changed, and people lost the context of a tradition, an anthropological tradition, or a cultural tradition, or a shamanic means and methods for that. So we kind of lost that in the 60s, and then in the 70s, Richard Evans Schultes, a Harvard ethnobotanist, started collecting these plants. He termed the coin ethnobotany, basically he was one of the first, and his students are Wade Davis, Mark Plotkin, of course Dennis McKenna and Terence McKenna were very influenced by him. Christian Rach, these are all like my heroes. I've been reading all of their stuff. He's from Germany. A few others that are, Wade Davis documentaries. You've probably seen Wade Davis's documentaries. So this, Yulia, funny. So I haven't read this book yet, but I've read all these authors. I thought there was a lot of work also by, Robert Forte. I don't know much about him. I haven't read his book. Someone gave it to me. I'll eventually read it. My theorizing of what it's about is obviously if we reinvest our energy and time into the traditional aspects of these plant medicines, shamanic medicines, or drugs, sadly, a stupid word, a word I disagree with largely. I believe that a drug is made by a man, and nature has plants. Duh. So the traditional context of working with these plants is it gives them a framework, a spiritual framework in your life, and a means and a method to interpreting the experiences instead of just racking them up and getting high and not knowing for whence you travel. So there's basically a breakdown. I've got my laptop there, really excited. So now I can sit there and put the laptop on the seat and type away. So I have my little desk there, and it plugs into both sides, which have a 12-volt adapter hooked up to the solar. So that's really exciting. So I can actually, I have two 12-volt adapters, and so I can run a fan and my laptop at the same time, so that's going to be really helpful in California. Yulia, I'm in the middle of Pennsylvania right now at a nice park, which has bathrooms, public facilities. So JD Applegarth says if I take I-70 West, I'll come through Ohio County, West Virginia, take a minute to see the Krishna Palace of Gold. Cool, that sounds awesome. I keep trying to post a map of where I'm at or where I'm going, so if I am coming close, because there's a lot of sitting there looking at Google Maps, if I am by you, let me know. It's easier that way. I'm trying to sweep up as much as I possibly can as I travel. Let's see. Welcome new friends. So it's been a lot. Finally got the seat in. Now I don't have to worry about that anymore. Oh my god, that was a lot of research because it's pretty scary drilling holes in the floor of a new, semi-new van. Whoops. So, I don't know, Yulia. I've never looked at Milford, PA, so you let me know. I don't know what's close. It's a lot of towns. So what I'm trying to do is mostly look to parks. So I basically navigate by green places on Google Maps. And yesterday I took the scenic route. I went right into dirt roads and mountains and felt like I was home, and it's been a big time there. Hiram, what's up, brother? Cool. I won't be Alabama. So my goal is, you know, I'm going to Indiana, Kentucky, possibly teaching in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, working on that. New Mexico with Jesse, that's going to be awesome. And then we're going to do a wild foraging and fermentation retreat. And then Arizona, Nevada, and California. And then go up to the California coast to about Big Sur area to visit some good friends out there. They're building cob structures, coming soon to you on live Facebook and all these means and methods. And then traveling back down, maybe scooping up Angie and Sage and traveling east. We're going to go up to Colorado, Vermont, teach there, and then Maine, New Hampshire, travel down to Jersey by around April, connect with family, Jersey fam, restock the apothecary, start our CSA of the year. So Lauren and I and our community there are building this herbal CSA. So I go out and wildcraft, bring it there, make tinctures, make all kinds of goodies. And then we have our 4 seasonal packages, which we're about to release. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to help support this work, that's a great way to do it. So you get 4 seasonal mixes of all of our Return to Nature herbal goodies, including tinctures, tea blends, chocolates. I have a wild mushroom medley coming out, which is all wild mushrooms that I've foraged the last year. So, you know, from all over the place. And that's the goal, is to sustainably harvest as I go and bring it to the apothecary, make all kinds of wonderful medicine, bring it to you all with the story. You know, the story is the medicine as well. So that'll all be coming soon. JD says there's a huge patch of golden seal right next to me. That's awesome. Golden seal is a great plant, and if you don't want to unsustainably harvest golden seal, we have a gajillion acres of Japanese barberry, which no one knows what to do with, which has berberine and is very similar, analogous to golden seal. So we can leave the native populations and make tincture for the whole world out of all the Japanese knotweed that's in this ecosystem, which they're now blaming on increasing the level of ticks, which I have not seen to be true at all. Yulia, I mentioned a lot of what I was eating when I was traveling, so I'll go into that a little more, because I try to mix it up with a whole bunch of options, and some of it is store-bought, most of it's from farms, and some of it's foraged. And right now the foraging time is unique. So I have, for example, I showed you my nutcracker. I've got acorns, hickory nuts, and black walnuts in here. And then I have a whole bunch of black walnuts that I harvested here. So that's a part of my wild diet, and I'll continue to be harvesting nuts as I travel and crack them and eat them as I go. So there is, you know, I dried these so they're not, they don't stain your hands anymore. So there is an example of some of the wild food I've been collecting, and then so there is plantain, dandelions, chickweed, lobelia, which you don't want to eat, gill over the ground. So that's a good onion, wild onions. So there's a good amount of microgreens to eat just all over here. And obviously this is not the cleanest place, it's right by the bathroom, but if it's here, it's everywhere, you know. So there is cleavers, for example, or bedstraw. So all these microgreens, nom nom nom. Couldn't resist. So those represent Instagreens. As I mentioned, which I'll try to complete up here, I envision doing trays of microgreens. Plus, I'm soaking a lot of things. So all you need is a ball jar, and if you have any sprouting seeds, you can always fill a ball jar with sprouting seeds. One of the things I mentioned also is the wild rice and the mung beans that I have. All that gets soaked till the point of sprouting. And the walls, I'm going to build some sprouting capacity on them. Here is some microgreens I bought. So yesterday I visited this Amish family. It was amazing because they had an organic raw milk sign. So I got some kefir. I got eggs. So I always keep eggs with me, and I find if you don't put eggs in the refrigerator, when they come from the chickens, they last forever. So when they're rubbed with antibacterial substances on the outside and then refrigerated, they don't last very long at all if not refrigerated. So luckily I get a lot of very close to the earth eggs. That's my ethical principles. So I started out foraging kind of like more on the vegan side and then came more towards animals because they're local. And that's a huge debate, and you've heard me talk about this probably to some degree. So actually, what else I bought from the Amish is bacon, and it's really tasty, and I eat like 2 to 3 pieces of that for breakfast in the morning. And it's so interesting because we have this connotation that that's unhealthy, and so I talked to the Amish about what their most unhealthy food was, and I said that mine was bacon, and they just looked at me like, what the hell are you talking about? And in a world where we jack the bacon with preservatives and antibiotics, that's probably 99% of why it's bad for us. Plus the whole idea of cholesterol being the demon is all debunked now, and cholesterol is very important. Cholesterol is essential for hormone production in the body. So there's all these aspects. No, I don't think that you should eat factory farmed bacon, and I don't think that enslaving pigs in any way is helpful. But I also see that something like the fossil fuels required to ship foods from overseas is also harmful to the planet and killing animals. The child slave labor of the product harvesting, like vegan ethical coconut oil, for example, is also a problem. And then the plastic packaging on all the stuff is also a problem, and is also made by natural gas and fossil fuels. So trying to cut into, okay, well, how can I eat more locally? And that is something that's driving my dietary choices. And these pigs were actually outside, right next to the barn, and they had, like 5 miles to wander. And so it's a very different thing than going to eat like factory farmed bacon. So we need to also conserve that. So the fat that I'm getting from that and the cholesterol I'm getting from that, I actually now believe are extremely healthy, if done in moderation. That's the thing, and healthy from healthy animals, etc. If done excessively with all kinds of preservatives, antibiotics, then no, it's not healthy for you. If you have obesity, you shouldn't be eating maybe like tons of animal fat, but moderation has always been the key. So with that, this morning I had some vegetable soup that I made yesterday, and I cooked up 3 slices of bacon, and then I fried sunflower shoots in the bacon fat, and I added that to the soup, and then I ate that. So that feels really nourishing and very potent, and I will now be very grateful of the pig body that's inside of me and how it powers me. So these are choices that are very difficult to make, but require a lot of discussing and conscious dialogue around. You probably have seen me have the debate with somebody who said that importing hemp seeds is less fossil fuel consumption than animal agriculture, and I believed him. And I don't really believe in animal agriculture in the sense of large-scale animal production. I believe in backyard production. So my ideal would be to be living on a homestead and have like 20 chickens and kill them every once in a while for food, and also hunt wild and try to kill turkeys and a deer, once a year. And that would be my diet versus buying all this crazy stuff from Whole Foods, which is destroying the planet, even if it's vegetables. So, monocultures are also a very dangerous thing to engage in. So what we try to do is we try to reduce, and I think it's a very gray area, everything I'm talking about is gray. It's not black and white. People will simplify it down to being a black and white discussion. However, as I'm mentioning, killing bonobos for coconut oil to ship it, and killing birds and all kinds of animals in the ocean with fleets of ships which ship things over to us, and then all the plastic and the packaging is also a problem and is also killing animals. So that local pig next to my van, grown by Amish people, is definitely a very different situation than eating Purdue factory farmed chemical garbage in which is called bacon. So I've come almost full circle into the idea that, well, the standard American diet wasn't the problem. The problem was lethargy and all the chemicals and all the preservatives and the nasty stuff that we're adding to it. I think that's a huge factor. So cool, JD Applegarth. The idea is, as I mentioned, I feel like I'm giving you incomplete ideas. There's so many ideas on the table and so many directions to take it. So after I head back from the West Coast, I'm going to travel from March, April to the East Coast and do a tour basically from Maine to Asheville by the late summer, so spring to summer, and then travel back west for next October. So that's the vision for now. So hope to see you all out there. Pamela asks, how am I cracking the black walnuts? If you saw before, I have a nutcracker with me in the form of a giant mortar and pestle made from sassafras. So very amazing. Yeah, Yulia, the Amish had the best kefir, so that's amazing, from raw milk cows. Yulia, I didn't get raw milk because first of all, it was in half gallons, which is too much for me, especially with temperature fluctuations. You don't want to keep stuff like that. So when I'm buying food or gathering food for this van, I understand what is extremely perishable and I keep it in a certain compartment, and I understand which is mildly perishable and which is, storable. It's very possible to have a lot of food. For example, I have an onion, right? I don't eat onions often, but I had this, and it's a big commitment because basically the whole van smells like onions and until I eat it all. So I'm more tempted to eat an entire onion over the next 2 days, and I'll be really smelly in my onion world, and I'll get all this amazing medicinal benefit, and I pretty much am traveling solo anyway until the weekend. So that will get used up. This was like a special little on sale thing which I made basically into salad dressing, and so that's not going to last very long, so I'll have to eat that. And so then there's like, if I have an avocado or a tomato, it has to go in the front area and be very carefully not smushed into bits. And then there's, milk products don't last very long, cheese lasts very long, but milk does not. Luckily, raw milk actually is fine for you if it does go bad, but if it's pasteurized, it's bad. But I'm not really a big fan of soured milk, which is kind of close to kefir. Kefir is just with grains. So I didn't get the raw milk. I also find that fermented dairy is much better for your body than non-fermented dairy, so I would prefer to take the dairy in the form of cheese or in the form of kefir or yogurt, and that is, I think, less mucus producing on the body and also better for you. Now again, it doesn't mean that I think we should all drink factory farmed milk. I think that basically we should have like a cow or a goat in our backyards, and that should be the family cow or the goat, and that's always how it was. So awesome, Pamela. That sounds like a cool Facebook page, Friends of the Wild Edible Microgreens. Definitely send me a request. Yeah, JD Applegarth, raw milk is definitely amazing. So this was from an Amish family who have probably, I don't know, 150 cows the most, and they're milking them, and they're living really close to the earth, and that feels really good. And not everybody has access to milk like that, and I think that makes a huge difference. So those were people, that family who I grilled. The first thing I asked her was about if she was familiar with feeding the animals GMO grain. That's a big concern for me. I don't want to eat genetically modified grain. And they said they grow all the grain themselves that they give the animals, and they were conscious of genetically modified organisms, and they were against them. So that was really insightful for me, which makes a really different conversation. Tella says, I wonder why more people don't eat more venison since there are an abundance of deer. There's an idea that deer are overpopulated, especially in places like New Jersey, but actually I think it's a problem of cows. It's not a problem of deer. So actually the white-tailed deer was almost extinct at the turn of the century, but then we introduced cattle, and this is a big mafia problem. Cattle ranching, and those cows actually do horrible damage to the ecosystem they live in. They are very needy, and actually it turns out that buffalo can rear their young, no problem, don't need any help. They contribute to the prairies and the grasslands where cows generally tend to really damage the ecosystem. So we need to, if we were a sane society, we would restore the buffalo and then see them for food, versus, you got to understand, versus importing salmon from China, That just doesn't make any sense. Or factory farm chicken, and so, or imported coconut oil, and that's how native people did it for a reason. They weren't like, oh yeah, I'm so self-righteous because I import all this food from all over the country to get my fats. They're like, oh look, we better go hunt this buffalo so we don't all die. And I think there's a power and a humbleness in that, of trying to live off your hands, and that is my goal, to live as close to the earth as possible, and to live from what I can hunt and gather myself. And there's just not enough nuts and seeds in the ecosystem to really do that without some serious exploitation, some serious restoration, or a tribe who does nothing but gathers acorns and processes them all day for probably 4 months straight. So if you want to help me do that, let's try to do that. Yeah, the deer tick count has nothing to do with deer, actually. Ticks are prolific on robins, raccoons. Ticks are all over everything. It's a misnomer. It actually should be called the black-legged tick, not the deer tick, because that gives a false sense that deer are the ones who carry deer ticks, or the infections associated, and that's not true at all. All animals, mice also can get bit by deer ticks. Another deer tick can bite them and get Lyme and co-infections, so that's a bigger issue. So with eating venison, we have a cattle problem, and then people would look to venison, and then my hope is that people would start realizing that pesticides all over their lawn is not the best way to raise local venison. Waterway pollution is not the best way to locally raise venison, and there's something powerful about the undoing of that. All we had to do was nothing to have local wild venison in your front yard, and that's what it is now, except they're eating horrible chemical lawns, and it's destroying their livers and making them toxic and making them no better than factory farmed animals. And that's something that I think if we were more localizing and getting off of the factory farm idea into the local wild ecosystem, we would see the damage being done in a more direct way. It's not, oh well, it happens in China and they're putting antibiotics in chicken and no big deal. And I think that's a huge issue, obviously. I'm not condoning meat eating like that. You know what I mean? That's what I think. Oh, so you eat meat? No, I think of shrink wrap packaged pieces of bodies, and what I'm looking towards is animals who have lives and souls and have to, one has to develop a relationship with the land they live upon and caretake it and try to understand their place in it. That's a very different role, and use all the animal and make clothing from the hide, and that's a very different responsibility and role than going to a grocery store to buy anything. Katie asks, what tincture do I recommend for winter blues? I think, the easiest thing to say is vitamin D. So increased foods that have vitamin D. A lot of those, as I mentioned, are butter, ghee, kefir, yogurt, things like that. Eat lots of chickweed, and then dealing with the stabilizing of the mind. Things like, I like a combination tea of Tulsi, linden, and lemon balm for basically the blues, and that's a really good combo. And then of course any sort of tincture, especially so if you're female, I would say something for female hormones. Shatavari, red raspberry, combination of that. Get the hormones balanced, get the vitamin D levels up, and also then, don't stagnate. Make sure you stay active, make sure you still go out for walks in the woods, get sunlight on your body, whatever that can mean. Don't hibernate out, don't hide, don't isolate yourself. Thanks, Yulia. So Jessica says grass-fed is one of the highest vitamin D sources. Support your local homestead. Well, well said, well said. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to ask me anything about the Foragemobile, herbalism, foraging. What are you eating? What are you finding? That's a little look at, kind of the basic setup of living in the Foragemobile. This gives me the luxury to be able to sleep in a lot of different places, from campsite to dirt road to Walmart parking lot to suburban neighborhood. I pretty much can hide in all those places. Steph asks, what foods help belly fat or fat in general over the winter? You're supposed to get fat over the winter. That's actually what you're supposed to do. Instead of using fossil fuels to heat your home, you build more fat so that you can burn it when you need it. So don't look at how we synthetically manipulate the environment. Look at what are you going to do in the spring to lose that. So I would say eat fat, eat lots of it over the winter. That's your fuel. Turn down your thermostat, burn less fossil fuel, and then when the spring hits, get really active and compensate and make up for it. And that's, fat doesn't necessarily make you fat. That's a misconception. Hydrogenated oils, those are probably much worse for us. So don't be afraid of fat. Just know that there's a seasonal, that's part of the thing I try to always talk about is when you're eating locally, you're eating a diet which actually rotates nutrients, and so in the winter you crave a certain different diet than you do in the summer. And if it's all good food and you're not just eating like Wonder Bread all winter, then it's actually necessary and helpful. And then you stop craving that in the spring and you start eating tons of greens because you're living off the land. And that intimate connection is broken, and that's where I think we get these dietary religions of like, oh no, this is the best diet for all times, for all people, for all places. That's because a corporation is tricking you into thinking strawberries grow all year long, and they're importing them from third world countries all over the place to continue to make the illusion that there's strawberries all year long. And so strawberries are not the best food for all year. Fruit is not the best food for all year. What you have is the best food for all year. What you have locally growing, look out your backyard, that's what is seasonal. So the idea of, is ghee healthier than butter? I would say that we as a culture are very afraid of cholesterol and have overdone it, and therefore had a lash back against cholesterol, and there's some bad science to say that cholesterol causes heart disease. Actually, cholesterol is also responsible for destroying plaque in the arteries. It's also responsible for keeping the arteries supple. It's also responsible for thyroid and other hormones. You cannot get cholesterol from vegetables. So cholesterol is necessary, but what nuance we lost was what kind of cholesterol from what, and if it's toxic and living in a horrible environment and not getting to run around or walk and injected with antibiotics and chemicals and drinking water with fluoride and chloride in it and living in its own feces, then that is bad cholesterol for you. But some cholesterol from animal sources is not bad for you. So ghee is said to be better for you because it removes the cholesterol, and that's seen as something that we're afraid of. I don't think in a moderate amount, you think of being a hunter-gatherer tribe, this is the thing. So coconut oil has no cholesterol. Nope. It can boost your good, quote-unquote, good cholesterol, but it doesn't have its own cholesterol. And you look at the world, look at how much thyroid problem there is, look how many ovarian problems there are. Look how many people who switched to a vegan diet with tons of soy milk got PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and polyps all over their ovaries. Women who suddenly were eating 25 pounds of soy a day because it had different forms. Like, oh, tofu for lunch and soy milk for dinner with my bowl of cereal, and then soy milk for breakfast, and then soybeans, and oh, it's in fillers and everything. So that is also causing hormone issues. So just trying to catch up to these ideas. Lots of good stuff said. So, cholesterol is not your enemy. I will repost an article I wrote called Fat Doesn't Necessarily Make You Fat. Please ask me about it if I don't get to it. And that's a really important topic. And just think, hunter-gatherers living off the land were not eating beef 6 days a week. They would have one of their tribe's people win. They would score a deer and everybody would eat it for a week, and then there would be none left except for some fat, and they'd cook greens and fat for the next few months, and then after that there might be some jerky which they ate sparsely, and that's called eating deer, and that lasted 6 months. Now we eat predominantly muscle tissue, not the organs, and we can buy it at the grocery store for so cheap because it's subsidized by an industry and it's corrupt, and so people are eating an excessive amount of it, and they're not eating greens, and they're definitely not eating wild food in combination with that. So it's not an on or off switch. We're being tricked and manipulated by the on or off switch thinking, and what it really is if you were hunting for your own food, you would get a squirrel every couple of weeks or every couple of days. It's not like you'd eat, 25 pounds of steak per month, and that's what people are doing. So I'm not a fan of cows. I don't eat really red meat. I eat bacon on occasion, which is a new experiment for like the last year. I want to switch that all to venison, and that makes sense to me. So Pamela says, a question about toxins in the wild edible greens. I'm not worried personally, but I do want to be responsible. I'm curious about potential toxins in nettles, sow thistle, and then your message gets cut off because that's what Facebook does. There is no problem of toxins in nettle or sow thistle unless they are growing in toxic environments, which is why you have to intimately get connected with the places you're foraging with, which is why you're the caretaker of that location. And don't think that the foods grown in the grocery store are free of those toxins. They're totally full of them. So we often think wild food, oh my god, it has to be so pristine, and we're afraid, and then we go to a grocery store and get subpar version, which was, it takes 2 years to turn a cesspool into a USDA organic farm. So don't think just because it has a sticker on it, it's angelically pure. It's not necessarily. It could have been grown in high heavy metals or farmland which was once toxic and remediated. But the remediation process is a joke. It's not, real. It's parts per million or parts per billion, and it's basically known what parts per million or parts per billion of lead are toxic. And as long as it's under that, it's a spectrum. It's math. So as long as it's under that, then it's acceptable for human consumption. So this is something that we should be mindful of, but not phobic of when it comes to our local diet, but completely trusting when it comes to an exotic diet of a grocery store. So Tella asks, what is my idea of eating eggs? I think eggs are a humble way to get in between foraging and homesteading in a way that means that you basically don't need anything from the grocery store. So it's either chickens in your backyard with local eggs or tons of coconut oil picked by slave labor children and shipped and imported from Thailand. So I would rather have 20 chickens in the backyard. And so that's really something that's gets you cholesterol, and it gets you fat, and it gets you omega fatty acids. And otherwise, where are you getting them from? How far away are they coming? KDS, is refined coconut oil bad compared to unrefined? We always want the most unrefined oil as possible. That is how it becomes less and less rancid. The more refining and the more processing and the more heat treating that occurs. So olive oil, the first pressing is low heat, the second pressing is higher heat, the third pressing is higher heat, the fourth pressing is higher heat. And once you get to those, they're toxic and rancid, and they're horrible. That's the stuff that also causes arterial damage and high plaque buildup. So local pigs that live happy lives are not as toxic for you as eating Wesson vegetable oil, you know? So it's not cholesterol that's the demon, it's where the source is coming from. So hydrogenated vegetable oil is horrible for you, you know. So you want as unrefined as possible. That's always going to be the highest amount of anti-inflammatories compounds, which means, if you think about it, the plant has these anti-inflammatory compounds to reduce inflammation in its own self. So it builds omega fatty 3 acids to keep inflammation low in its body. It also, a tree is swaying in the wind, it gets cell damage and has to restore the cell damage. Big storms create an aching back for a tree too. Okay, so it produces these chemical compounds to restore its own cell tissue. We get them into our body, and the more that we get it from that direct source, the more it's going to have the anti-inflammatory compounds, but the more it's stressed out and the more it's processed and the more heat that is exposed to it, the more those compounds actually get rendered, used, and therefore become stuff that the body's supposed to get out of itself. So you're eating the parts of the previous body that it was actually would be waste for itself, you know. And so that's something that we then want to take in the best way possible. So a factory farm animal, which has omega fatty 3 acids, like chicken, eggs, if the chicken is under tons of stress and hates its life and is in horrible conditions, it's already converting the omega fatty 3 acids to 6 and 9s, which are inflammatory acids. So that chicken, depending on its life, is going to provide your body a certain ratio of 3 to 6 to 9 acids, which will determine the inflammation levels in your body. So the happier the animal or the happier the vegetable or whatever that means to you, then the more health you're going to get. So the less processing, the less manipulation, the less industry that's between you and your food source, obviously the more nutrition and the better it's going to be for you. Yeah, Pamela, if you're talking about, are any of those plants themselves toxic? No. If you're asking, can any of those plants take up toxins in the environment, the answer is always yes. Then the subtlety to the first answer is, of course, every plant chemical can be seen as a toxin. This is sort of the Darwinistic survival of the fittest mentality. Everything that everything is making out there is fighting against everything else. And if you see it from that lens, that perspective, then you can say yes, and Homo sapien has evolved the liver enzymes to be able to turn those toxins into nutrients. And that's basically all that's occurring. So no, they're not toxic for us. Although everything has what we would call metabolic waste. And if metabolic waste builds up because the body is highly inflamed and malnourished and stressed, then that metabolic waste becomes toxic because it builds up like a swamp. If the body's detoxification pathways are open, and if they're drinking spring water and eating local food and wild food and microgreens and raw honey and no preservatives, and even if the coffee is even if you're drinking coffee, it's organic and not full of pesticides, then that keeps your detoxification pathways open enough to clear out the metabolic waste and not turn it into a lymphatic stagnatory process, which causes you massive inflammation, which leads to things like cancer. So there's a whole wide spectrum. It's not just like on the outside, what food is better for me, kale or bacon? That's not even a real question. That's not even real. Pamela says, morning glory. Some say that convolvulus, there we go, is edible. I've never heard that morning glory could be edible. Of course, morning glory, heavenly blue morning glories, have a compound called LSA, lysergic acid. Don't know what the A stands for. Usually it's LSD. And that is actually a precursor, which was available to many indigenous cultures, that is LSD-like, the heavenly blue only, for some reason. So there are those compounds within morning glory, plus that family in itself has some toxic relatives, but not a lot is known. Bindweed, field bindweed is another one in that same family, which has concerns of toxicity but could have edible parts. So that's something we need to crack, Pamela. You're on the right track. I think that's a great query, and I hope you find it and let us know. Stress equals stress, Tella says. Absolutely. Simple rule, right? Jessica asked if I have any concerns about spring water being within a few miles of a mining operation. Definitely. That all can be a concern. However, think about what you would be getting if you were buying a plastic bottle of water. So, again, it's like, make the conversation nuanced. Don't let it become, oh, well, I only drink now spring water from Fiji because I'm afraid of local mine operations polluting the local springs. Well, what do you think Fiji is doing, on the other side? So we always have the gray area of the absolute chaos that our society is in, especially environmentally, as far as making these choices, which is why I'm trying to kind of show you all and provide some options and find some middle ground. Like, I'm not being an extremist at all. Like, I have, look, pistachios, coffee, dates, sunflower shoots, plastic, but it's a heck of a lot reduced. And I think if we all ate sort of in this way, like, think of it 70% local, 30% crazy, go whatever you want, eat your cashews. And even if that was the paradigm, I think nature would restore herself and the ice caps would melt and we won't all die. It's the pure excess, it's the pure waste. It's the buying packaged meat and eating half of it and throwing it in a dumpster. That's the kind of stuff that is causing, you don't get that fossil fuel back. Avocados being shipped from Mexico, how many of them actually just get thrown in a dumpster? Not all of those. What it's like at the grocery store. A lot of those avocados get, ruined in shipping. All of that, still the fossil fuel was used. And that's the kind of thing. So, as Gandhi said, there's not enough for everyone's greed, but we all have enough for everyone's need. I truly believe that. And so I don't think there's too many people in the world. I think the infrastructure for distribution is sucky. And that's a very different thing. I don't think there's any shortage of food. I don't think there's any shortage of resources for anyone on this planet. We saw that with Standing Rock. Look how much crap we sent them. They had REI full for free. Like every store possible. Pamela, let me know what issue of toxins concerns. Yeah, it could just be paranoid wild food fears. If you're going to say stinging nettle grown in your backyard is more toxic than eating ramen noodles, then you need to do a little chemical analysis. So, think about the cross comparison of what people are usually used to versus the wild, and they're always going to be afraid of cooties out in the wild because that's how we've been conditioned, and that's what's basically, ruining the whole world, is that we're now in a position where we're afraid of the local nature, and we're allowing a corporation to exploit it outside of our view, and we think that we just trust blindly that they're doing it in a good and ethical way, even though it's not. It's definitely not true. So there's enough for everyone's need, but there's not enough for everyone's greed. What we have is an infrastructure and distribution problem. We don't have any shortage of anything. Fossil fuel is not the enemy if it was 10% of our use, right? So solar and wind is the revolution. That is why this van is running on solar, and you can too. Many blessings, friends. See you soon.